Alright folks, my name is Freyn and the first round of Center Creature submissions is over. So once again I'm back to go over the final 10 for anyone who's not had a chance to keep up with the quite extensive submissions that have been taking place over the last week. Now unsurprisingly, given the terrain makeup of the map, it has been an extremely ocean-centered collection of submissions. There's only been the tiniest amount of land or air tames present. The community has displayed a unified desire to bring some attention back to the sea. Now as always, the vote is meant to be around the creature and not the abilities, as there is no guarantee that they'll get in, but there has been a reasonable precedent of late for them being kept, and a rules change this time indicates that the design is a larger factor in the finished product than they've previously implied. Even so, it is always worth remembering that not everything carries over. Implemented designs will be focused on trying to have a unified, more balanced makeup and not simply every ability under the sun. Now as always, I will try and keep this as brief as possible, and if you find this video helpful, I hope you will please consider subscribing, liking, and letting me know what you think in the comments. But now, without any further delay, let's get to it. First in our water-themed final we have the Saivodus, a large tenacant that existed over 300 million years ago and shares a direct common ancestor with modern sharks and the Megalodon. While not much of Saivodus has been found, many similar species have, and this gives us a picture of a shark slightly larger than the great white and sporting a second dorsal fin. As a design for ARK, it is relatively simple, not intended to be a replacement for the existing Meg, but more of a support to it, featuring a healing pulse similar to the Daedon, but with potency dependent on which meat type you choose to consume, from raw meat at the lowest up to prime fish at the highest. A secondary grab attack will allow it to either restrain small creatures to then be launched with a tail smack like some sort of living torpedo, or to latch onto larger creatures in order to thrash around and wash blood into the water, providing a damage boost to nearby allies, although note this does not apply bleed to the target. And if you'd like to get yourself a sea support shark, then all you need to do is cover one of your tames in a new narcotic-laden chum, inviting the Saivodus in to latch on and fill its gills, slowly raising its torpor until you can stuff it with your food of choice. Next comes the Nothosaurus. Previously seen in the Ragnarok final, although with a very different design, the Nothosaur was a slender, semi-aquatic reptile that lived around 240 million years ago in the mid to late Triassic, and is thought to possibly be an ancestor of the Leopleurodon. As an addition to the centre, it would be found roaming both beaches and shallower seas, bringing with it a pack buff, bioluminescent dyes, alpha warning glow, a throat pouch that acts as a reusable fish basket, and the capability to charge its tail with static and rapidly shock opponents. But that's not all, as the Notho would be one of the few creatures in ARK that makes use of the day-night cycle in any real way, as when sufficiently basked in the warmth of the sun, it not only changes colour and patterning like many modern reptiles, but also gains a stamina and damage boost, turns that throat pouch into a mobile cooking pot, and gains access to two new water-expelling abilities, either as a rapid-fire water jet for damage, or as weaponized steam to blind. Taming a new reptilian friend needs you to first isolate the one of your choosing, then offer it a small selection of pearls. With a bit of luck, it'll accept them and allow you to start giving it a proper feed of Tuso tentacles. Our third entry is the tongue-twisting Mesoparapylocheles, a giant hermit crab from around 100 million years ago, with very little information to be found, except for the fun fact that two of its species are named Michael Jacksoni and Janet Jacksoni. Fittingly, our creature aims to be just as endurant as the Jacksons' legacies, with the bulk of its extremely thorough submission being based around multiple types of craftable shells and claw guards that offer various bonuses. 5 types are presented, the first a simple stone housing, second a metallic set with extra defense, weight reductions and a pistol shrimp stun attack, an obsidian set with even more defense and an additional bleed. An unusual biotoxin coated shell is the fourth, featuring less armour but torpor-inducing thorns, and the final conical crystal home with very low defense but a high knockback to anything that hits it. Now, as you'd expect from a hermit crab, regardless of which shell it is using, it can always tuck itself inside, preventing movement but increasing that defense even further. But it's not its only trick, as it is immune to barrier stuns, creature grabs and dismounts, it can slam its shell into the ground for a knockback, and launch itself high distances in a form of cannonball attack that inflicts solid damage to anything in its way. Its shell will even explode when taking too much damage, allowing me to make an awful joke around the king crab popping out. Naturally though, for something so defensive, this is not going to be a trap and trank tame, instead needing first to be C4'd into hiding so you can start to break its shell open with your hatchet, flee when it pops out to see what's going on, and then come back and innocently help it repair its shell to gain its affections. It's not the only crustacean in our top 10, as our next entry is the Pemphix, a small lobster species from the early Triassic around 250 million years ago, but discovered only last year. This is of course ARK though, so our Pemphix goes from a small 2 inches to much larger and sports 2 distinctly different claws, one for stabbing, the other for grabbing, but both enabling it to climb surfaces. Aside from being able to grab creatures, the Pemphix's main function is to heal, with an pulse again comparable to the Daedons, but using this heal will also fill up a charge bar, and once the charges are maxed, you gain access to an additional latch function, temporarily attaching yourself to a single creature and supplying a brief, complete damage immunity and extreme focused regeneration, sort of akin to the Team Fortress Medic's Ubercharge. An additional highly rare blue variant is proposed to spawn with a much stronger heal and an additional stunning punch, but taming for both would still be the same. Simply need to get yourself grabbed and then feed it while it holds you in front of its jaws, in a very similar manner to the current Tuso. Number 5 is the mighty Shastasaurus, a huge 21 meter long genus of ichthyosaur from the late Triassic with a shortened toothless snout. Although interestingly, there is debate that the species chosen here of Shastasaurus Citaniensis may actually belong to Shonisaurus instead. So I suspect Wildcard would create their own subspecies to avoid complication if that should change. Nevertheless, our Shasta offering here is even larger, approaching the 60 meter plus of our in-game lead Ichthys in size, and being nearly as docile in nature. A reluctantly solitary animal who longs for company, a Shasta can easily be tamed by simply surrounding it with Ichthys, putting them on wander, and helping to ease it into your tribe, providing of course the group stays protected. Now once tamed and settled, it has 2 modes which it switches between when crossing the surface, one being a whaling ship equipped with harpoon turrets for restraining and reeling opponents, and the other being a vast traversable submersible, able to house tames, launch torpedoes, and even build a small base. Further abilities include echolocation to highlight creatures or fire a disorienting blast, oil and pearl gathering, suction feed to grab small creatures, and the ability to whip up a storm with its tail, briefly entrap anything approaching from the rear. Next up we have another returning submission in the Miracinonyx, finalist for Ragnarok and almost for Aberration until it withdrew. It's a large prehistoric cheetah from North America, and in ARK it has one specific goal: speed. It aims to be the single fastest way to travel, and does this via 4 swappable modes. The first is simple and the only one that allows a basic attack, while the second provides a reticle to throw traps and explosives on the move. A third would employ spark powder to light up the ground behind it, and the final fourth allows for automatic weaving around any obstacles you may encounter. Not mobile enough yet though? How about an extra boost, taking it fast enough to run on water and drift? It's all about movement. There's jumping, climbing, vaulting off taller creatures. Even its basic attack is tailored for movement, as when using it during a sprint, you get a small skill check bar, with perfect timing on a second press dealing additional damage. Petting it will boost your insulation, rocks can be harvested directly for spark powder, and a final tech saddle enables it to leave Tron-style barriers in its wake. It's truly focused all on going as fast as you can, as often as you can. And if you can't wait to rush out and grab yourself a cheetah, you'll find them in the form of wild babies, although be aware that a direwolf companion will be needed if you wish to fully imprint it. Our 7th entry is the Hatzegopteryx, an immense pterosaur found in Transylvania and initially thought to be a new species of theropod due to the sheer size of the skull fragments. Wider than a wyvern and taller than a rex, its in-game size would only be matched by the size of its feature list, posing speed outpacing a wyvern, almost non-existent stamina drain, a cliff latch, rivalry buff against other large flyers, increased speed near water, weight reductions, stamina boost to friendly flyers, a fear roar and medium-sized creature carrying just for a start. Its large beak could be used to swallow anything up to raptor-sized whole. Its massive wings could be clapped together, launching it skywards and repelling other flyers. Leaving it near a downed creature would dissuade hostiles from approaching, and there's even a rescue mode to provide automated pickup and mounting when whistled. The Hat's submission even includes a tech variant of the creature with increased size and strength, and an ironically tech-disabling EMP roar. Finally, finishing up, we have 3 saddles, with proposals ranging from the basic one coming in at 65, to a turreted variant at 70, and a bomber saddle at 85. Remember, of course, these are just suggestions and not a concrete list should it win. The price for taming such a monster of the sky would be the sacrifice of your tribe's baby dinos. The higher the level, the more effective the feed. Now, leaping in at number 8 is the Thoracopterus, better known as Flying Fish. Another creature from the Triassic, the Thora appears extremely similar to our current extant species, with long fins used to glide across the water's surface, and naturally this is exactly how it would function in ARK as well. The higher the speed, the further your fish will take you when you take that leap from the ocean waves, controlling much like a Maywing with angled glide and parachute control. It's even got some limited land movement, able to survive as long as it has oxygen, flopping its way back into the sea. While in water, it is capable of a simple speedy dash or a knockback-inducing spin, both of which will apply bleed to anything in its path, courtesy of those sharpened wing fins. And if by some chance you find a situation that you can't leap or dart away from, there is always a final vanish action similar to a rock drake or Desmodus. Happily, it makes more use of some of the other rarely noticed creatures of the oceans, as the taming is a nice, simple, passive feeding of ammonite bile. Although they are rather skittish, as they are prone to dashing away if you should have a larger tame nearby at the time. Next up is the Bajadasaurus, an unusual sauropod species that roamed Argentina 145 million years ago, with twin rows of spines running down its neck in a similar fashion to its close relative, the Imagosaur. Our proposal, however, brings some extreme sexual dimorphism, and not just in appearance but also in function. The males have their regular spines, a bellow to buff allies, and are highly aggressive, even fighting their own kind, a process which a survivor can take advantage of by assisting and then healing the victor to tame it. The more defensive females, on the other hand, sport a pair of neck sails and are tamed via simply dropping fibre in front of them, with a preference to try and scare their opponent by puffing and fear-bellowing before resorting to a fight. Even the land creatures in this vote are teeming with water-based abilities though, as both sexes gain a hydration buff from the rivers and lakes they frequent, something a witty survivor can take advantage of as it persists even when exposed to rain or a simple canteen. There's even a permanent additional stacking water buff if the eggs are hatched in water, and an increased damage effect if they get far enough below sea level. And rounding out the ability set is the raising and lowering of their necks at will, rhino-like acceleration, a tail-based grab, and the ability to passively scrape organic poly from their bodies. And topping off our list is the Orcinus Citaniensis, or prehistoric killer whale. Swimming as recently as 2.6 million years ago in surprisingly what is now England, killer whales are in fact a member of the dolphin family, and originally instead called whale killers. And it is this killer instinct that the final submission is based around, turning the various trophy drops into a specialised track and hunt function. Feeding trophies would allow our orca and its pack to track and cause additional damage to their chosen quarry, on top of their pack buff and leader boost. Should they kill enough targets before the buff wears off, they'd even be able to gain a trophy drop blueprint. Now, how that would work I'm unsure, but it would certainly make farming those Tuso tentacles a bit easier. Further abilities are a shoreline ambush to grab and haul beach dwellers into the sea, an echolocation that could track not only trophy targets, but also loot crates and even be used to stun opponents. And finally, as a reflection of extant orcas, they can teach juveniles in the tribe some new tricks by transferring some of their own XP to the baby. But how would you tame such a ruthless hunter? Well, by giving it those trophies it loves, of course, selected at random from a list like a big, wet moss chops. And there we have it, An end to my poor jokes and our finalists in hopefully not too drawn out detail. If you'd like to vote, there is a link in the description and pinned comment, and we are once again using a ranked system here. Place the creatures in the order you'd most prefer to see them. Should your number 1 choice be eliminated, your vote transfers onto number 2, and so on. So for maximum chance to avoid disappointment and the need to cry rigging on the forums, be sure to keep that process in mind. Rather than putting them in an order you think is the least threatening to your favourite, it is instead all about getting the one with the highest majority appeal. So, thank you all very much for watching. Hopefully this has made the finalists for your top 10 ARK videos of the past 20 minutes. Good luck to all our new potential friends of the centre, and I'll be back to discuss the results soon. Bye bye.